Is this the best heavy metal album of 1969? Now, I know what you're thinking. Heavy metal didn't exist in 1969. It began in 1970 with the debut album by Black Sabbath. Well, that's true in a sense. You see, Led Zeppelin II was released on October 22nd, 1969, and Black Sabbath was released on February 13th, 1970. So the difference was a mere 3.5 months or so. So for the purposes of this video, let's just say that it is the best heavy metal album of 1969. I will be discussing a few things in this video, such as how they recorded the album in several sessions at different studios, how it was a successful album, how they got poor reviews from critics, the controversial album cover, a few copyright lawsuits, and there were a few songs that were very influential, and they influenced some of the greatest guitar players of the 80s and 90s. Led Zeppelin II is the second studio album by Led Zeppelin. It was released the same year as the first album and produced by Jimmy Page. This is also the first album with Eddie Kramer as an engineer. The album saw the band expanding their musical style because the first album had a lot of blues, but also some psychedelic rock as well. This album had lots of guitar riffs, and I think that's the main thing about this album that really helped influence heavy metal music, which was later on. The album had 9 songs, and some of them are variations of older blues tracks, so not exactly a cover, but I guess you can say like another version of these songs. I'll talk about those later. Back in 1969, Led Zeppelin was very busy. They were constantly touring, and the album was recorded in bits and pieces. They recorded some in the same studio as the Rolling Stones, as well as others in Memphis, Los Angeles, and a small studio in Vancouver. It was different back then, because considering it was 1969, they didn't have all the technology we have today. So they had to spend a lot of time in each of these studios, and I think this is one of the reasons why it has a very unique sound, because there's somewhat of a spontaneity throughout the songs of the album. It's also a great sounding album. I recommend listening to it with headphones. You can hear the guitars swirling around your head. You can feel the bass guitar moving through you. It's just a very surreal experience. The album was very successful. It was a smash hit, topped the charts. But as for the critics, not everybody was in love with it. It might have been too new, or maybe they just weren't ready for this type of music. Some of the critics said it was too loud, others said it was too raw, and even said it was too repetitive. Also keep in mind that this was right after the psychedelic era, and people were accustomed to listening to these complex arrangements. And then here comes Led Zeppelin with this very raw album, and they weren't really sure what to do with it. John Mendelsohn at Rolling Stone called it one heavy song stretched over 2 sides. So in other words, this particular Rolling Stones review didn't age very well.
That one didn't age quite so well.
But now, so many years later, you can't deny that they laid down a blueprint for heavy metal that is still being followed today. The album cover is a little controversial, but basically it was designed by David Juniper. He was a friend of Jimmy Page, and they both went to art school together. It's based on a photograph of a particular division of the German Air Force in World War I. But what he did was he replaced the heads of the airmen, and he replaced them with other people, such as the faces of the band members. So, for example, there are other people as well. The blonde woman is a French actress whose name is Delphine Seyrig, and there were other people as well. The opening track is Whole Lotta Love. It's a very popular song, and there's a lot of history with it. I would say it's one of the songs which is the blueprint for heavy metal, because if you look at the main guitar riff, it's very similar to the main guitar riffs of other bands in the 70s and 80s, such as Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. It's a typical traditional heavy metal guitar riff. This was a pretty big hit. It was certified gold, and it was kind of a cover song. It's not completely original because parts of the song lyrics were adapted from the Willie Dixon song, You Need Love, which was recorded by Muddy Waters in 1962 as well.
Oh, sweet and cunning, baby, way down inside.
There was actually a lawsuit where they came to a settlement. Jimmy Page came up with a guitar riff for A Whole Lotta Love in the summer of 1968. He was on a houseboat on the River Thames, and according to John Paul Jones, he said that it was derived from a live improvisation during a performance of Dazed and Confused, although Jimmy Page denies this. The song was released as a single on November 7, 1969, and the B-side was Living, Lovin' Maid, She's Just a Woman. The single entered the Billboard Hot 100 on November 22nd, 1969. It remained on the chart for 15 weeks and peaked at number 4 and was the band's only top 10 single in the US. After this is a song, What Is and What Should Never Be. According to Jimmy Page, he said he wrote the song on an acoustic harmony Sovereign H1260 guitar, and it was also one of the first songs where Jimmy Page used his Gibson Les Paul for the recording. This was also one of the first songs recorded by the band where Robert Plant receives a writing credit. The song also has some interesting lyrics because it sounds like a love song, but according to Stephen Davis, who is the author of the Led Zeppelin biography Hammer of the Gods, the lyrics are about a romance that Robert Plant had with his wife's younger sister. Next is the Lemon Song, and this is basically another cover song. The original is called Killing Floor by the blues singer Howlin' Wolf.
I should've quit you, babe, a long time ago.
Led Zeppelin actually played the song live as a cover, but they basically took it and turned it into the Lemon Song. It also has lyrics that were taken from Robert Johnson's Traveling Riverside Blues, such as the line, "Squeeze my lemon till the juice runs down my leg."
Now you can squeeze my lemon till the juice runs down my...
And this was also a song that Jimmy Page played with the Black Crowes in 1999. Next is the song Thank You. It was written by Robert Plant as a love song to his wife. So it's kind of weird that there are 2 songs on this album. One's about a love affair for his wife's younger sister, and this one's about his wife. But it was the 60s. It's a great song. Jimmy Page plays the 12th string on this, and John Paul Jones plays the Hammond organ. I read a lot of comments when people said they had this as their wedding song. There's a great acoustic version by Chris Cornell. I recommend you checking that out. On side 2 are 2 hard rockers called Heartbreaker and Live and Love a Maid, She's Just a Woman. I listened them together because they were always played back to back on the radio. I don't know if they still do because I don't live in the US anymore. I haven't really listened to American radio in a while. If they do still play it like that, let me know in the comments. But it's like they always had to play these 2 songs back to back. But talking about Heartbreaker, it's one of the songs that gave birth to the heavy metal guitar riff. And I said one of them, not necessarily the first. The song is credited to all 4 members of the band. It has a very iconic guitar solo by Jimmy Page. He uses the pull-off technique, and according to Jimmy Page, the guitar solo was recorded in a different studio than the rest of the song. So that's why it kind of sounds different than the main song. He also said this was the first time he used his Gibson guitar with a stack of Marshall amps. The song is very influential, and this was where Eddie Van Halen got the idea for his 2-handed tapping technique that would become very popular 10 years later. And another guitarist who said it was very influential was Steve Vai. So as you can see, the song helped give birth to some of the best shredders of the 80s and 70s and even 90s. Then there was Live and Love a Maid. This is a song about a groupie who stalked the band early on in their career. This was also Jimmy Page's least favorite song. He never performed it live. The song did okay on the charts. It reached 65 on the Hot 100. Then the song Ramble On. This is a song, it's possibly one of the songs that influenced heavy metal and power metal because it's about Lord of the Rings. It's basically, there's one line in the song mentions the darkest depths of Mordor. They mention Gollum. They mention the Evil One, which is a reference to Sauron. As for the song itself, the style of the song is a mix between folk rock, hard rock, and blues rock. Jimmy Page used his Gibson Les Paul with some sustain effects, which made the guitar sound more like a violin. Then there's the instrumental Moby Dick. The song has a drum solo, often considered to be one of the best drum solos of all time. The original version of the drum solo was much longer, but they edited it down for the song. The main guitar riff was originally written for a song called The Girl I Love Got Long Black Wavy Hair. The song was later included on the live Led Zeppelin album BBC Sessions, released in 1997. I'm going to play a quick clip. It's the only known performance of the song, and I recommend you checking out the entire song. The guitar riff is not exactly the same, but it's very similar. The last song is called Bring It On Home. This is a blues song originally written by Willie Dixon. Another one of their semi-covers where the intro and outro play homage to the original, but the rest of the song was written by Page and Plant. It was also one of their songs that they played live throughout their career.
Holland, all aboard.
Also played during a reunion of the surviving members at Jason Bonham's wedding reception back in 1990. There was also a copyright claim brought against the band, but it was settled out of court. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of this album? Do you think it's the best metal album of 1969? How would you rank it in their discography? Check out this video I did of the first album that celebrated an anniversary back in January. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give this video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.